David Quinlan, the life, challenges, debate, and disasters of a gospel voice that wouldn't be silenced within the gospel music community. David Quinlan's name has great significance, particularly for those who view worship as a manner of life, rather than merely a sound. Quinlan's path is more than just music. It is a tale molded by calling, tenacity, and spiritual conviction. He is well known for his poignant lyrics, fervent worship leading, and dedication to faith. His voice has been heard on church stages and worldwide platforms because of his sincerity and love to God, not because of fame or glitz. Many people consider David Quinlan to be one of the most important figures in modern gospel music, especially in the Portuguese-speaking Christian community. Quinlan, who is well known for his fervent worship style, poignant lyrics, and unshakable faith, has had a difficult path. Beneath the stirring hymns and worship-filled stages is a tale of individual struggles, spiritual conflicts, bodily pain, and instances of public miscommunication. His life is an example of resilience, not the lack of suffering, but the will to persevere in the face of adversity. David Quinlan's journey into gospel music was never about pursuing fame because he was born with a strong passion for both music and ministry. Quiet preparation, education, and church service characterized his early years. His basis, like that of many gospel musicians, was not based on business aspirations but rather on worship sessions, prayer gatherings, and times of spiritual development. His conception of worship as something sacred, an offering rather than a performance, was molded by these early encounters. As his ministry grew, Quinlan gained recognition for his capacity to guide others into times of introspection and intimacy with God. Themes of surrender, optimism, healing, and unshakable faith are common in his music. His strength is in simplicity and truth, not in intricate arrangements or spectacular delivery. His songs are frequently characterized by listeners as being honest, consoling, and spiritually grounding, music that meets people where they are. But like many others in the ministry, David Quinlan has faced difficulties along the way. Beneath the serene presence and reverent sound is a life that has experienced hardship, sacrifice, and trying times. It can be difficult to lead others spiritually, particularly when one's own troubles must be kept private. Quinlan's narrative illustrates the fact that religious leaders are also people, following their own journeys of development, uncertainty, rejuvenation, and faith in God. His work has become more well-known in gospel circles over time, both for its spiritual integrity and musical merit. Through music that prioritizes reverence and authenticity, he has worked with churches, worship teams, and believers in various countries, contributing to the development of worship culture. Testimonials, stories from people who discovered serenity, inspiration, or spiritual clarity via his songs, are where his influence is most felt, not accolades or headlines. This article delves more into David Quinlan's life and travels. It examines his upbringing, his calling, the difficulties he has encountered, and the influence of his ministry and music. It also considers the challenges of leading a faith-centered life in a society that frequently misinterprets spiritual commitment. Quinlan's narrative becomes more than just a biography when viewed through this lens. It serves as a reminder of what it means to serve with humility, purpose, and unwavering faith. As we embark on this trip inside David Quinlan's life, we are encouraged to consider the strength of worship, tenacity, and a life dedicated to something more than oneself, in addition to learning about the man behind the music. Early life and spiritual underpinnings. Born in the UK, David Quinlan later relocated to Brazil, a decision that would eventually influence his religious beliefs and artistic vocation. Quinlan was introduced to Christian beliefs at a young age, but like many artists, his spiritual development was not straightforward. He struggled with belonging, identity, and purpose, particularly as he adjusted to a new language and society. He found solace in music. Quinlan had a keen sense of sound and emotion from an early age, and he frequently used music as a means of prayer rather than performance. His early years were characterized by internal conflict, a desire to comprehend both his role in the world and the voice of God. These early encounters subsequently served as the emotional foundation for his worship songs. Gospel music's ascent. In the world of gospel music, David Quinlan's ascent was slow but significant. Quinlan's music struck a chord because it felt genuine, unvarnished, and profoundly spiritual, in contrast to musicians who strive for popularity. His compositions were sincere screams of praise that represented actual human suffering and hope rather than polished pop anthems. Quinlan gained recognition for leading worship, rather than playing as his music became popular in Brazilian churches. His concerts frequently felt less like musical performances and more like protracted prayer meetings. His influence extended well beyond Brazil, and albums recorded around this time helped define a generation of devotees. However, success came with its own set of challenges. Schedules became rigorous, expectations increased, and the psychological effects of continuous ministering started to show. Behind-the-scenes struggles, Quinlan discreetly faced weariness, emotional pressure, and spiritual depletion while spectators witnessed a man full of faith and strength. He started to feel burdened by the obligations of ministry, which included frequent travel, public expectations, and the duty of guiding others spiritually. Quinlan, like many gospel performers, had to deal with the implicit demand to always project an air of strength, joy, and spiritual triumph. In faith-based leadership environments, acknowledging weakness is frequently misinterpreted, which led to internal strife. He battled feelings of uncertainty, loneliness, and the anxiety of letting people down. These difficulties did not diminish his faithfulness, rather they made him more human. Personal tragedy and health crisis. David Quinlan's diagnosis of a severe and potentially fatal illness was one of the most significant disasters of his life. Both the Christian community and fans were taken aback by the announcement. Being physically vulnerable became a significant spiritual challenge for a man whose life was centered on worship and faith. The course of treatment was taxing. Quinlan was pushed into a period of introspection and quiet due to pain, uncertainty, and the fear of dying. For a while, he took a break from public ministry to concentrate on healing, survival, and renewing his connection with God outside of the stage. This was a pivotal time. Later, Quinlan revealed that his faith was strengthened, rather than destroyed by illness. He discovered that worship does not vanish amid pain, rather it transforms. Public misunderstanding and controversy. Although not in the scandalous meaning frequently connected to prominent personalities, David Quinlan's career has not been without controversy. Instead, miscommunication, criticism, and divergent theological expectations were the root causes of his disputes. While some critics criticized his musical approach or leadership choices, others questioned his emotional worship style. There were times when his health problems kept him out of the public eye, which sparked rumors and unjust presumptions. Quinlan declined to participate in debates in public. Rather, he let consistency, openness, and time speak for him. He chose to remain silent in the face of criticism which cost him attention but kept his character intact. Tested faith, not broken. David Quinlan's survival, rather than his accomplishment, is arguably the most compelling part of his narrative. He returned with a stronger, more rooted faith after overcoming illness, emotional weariness, and public pressure. His later work demonstrated maturity, showing a greater desire to rest in God's presence and a decreased need to prove himself. He talked candidly on the value of community, healing, and vulnerability. Listeners weary with perfection-driven spirituality found great resonance in this candor. Quinlan became a voice for healing as well as worship. Legacy outside of music. The legacy of David Quinlan goes well beyond his albums and live performances. He is an example of a religion that permits hardship. His life demonstrates that worship does not necessitate perfection, and that believing does not imply exemption from suffering. Numerous worship leaders, musicians, and Christians have been inspired by him to approach Christianity with humility and honesty. Quinlan maintained his dedication to sincerity in the face of tragedy and hardship, which is uncommon in any public setting. The life of David Quinlan is not one of continuous triumph. It is a tale of falling, rising, doubting, persevering, and believing once more. His hardships, disputes, and tragedies strengthened rather than lessened his calling. Quinlan's path serves as a reminder that genuine faith is built in struggle in a society that frequently glorifies success without recognizing its costs. His voice still reverberates because it is genuine, not because it is perfect. As this examination of David Quinlan's life draws to a close, it is hard not to think back on the incredible trip he has taken, one filled with both glorious highs and heartbreaking lows. Quinlan's life narrative is a portrayal of a man whose life has been profoundly human, full of times of triumph, times of suffering, and events that push the boundaries of faith, endurance, and personal resilience. It goes beyond the sum of his public accomplishments or conflicts. By following his journey, we are reminded that a gospel artist's life is closely linked to the difficulties, disputes, and tragedies that mold every human being. even though it is frequently praised for its spiritual resonance and public achievements. David Quinlan's voice, his faith, and his commitment to gospel music have impacted numerous people throughout his career. Beneath the melodies and harmonies, however, there has been a constant undercurrent of personal struggle, times when he had to face truths that many of his followers would never experience due to life's responsibilities. Quinlan's path highlights the challenges of leading a life of influence while managing intensely personal struggles, from financial difficulties to family conflicts, from the demands of public scrutiny to the loneliness of being a spiritual leader in the spotlight. The fact that his music continued to inspire, uplift, and reach audiences worldwide in spite of the numerous storms he encountered is evidence of his tenacity. David Quinlan's public persona has also been shaped by disputes and miscommunications. Some disputes were intensely personal, affecting his family, friendships, and spiritual group, while others were magnified by the media. Even though they are difficult, these instances show the human side of a guy who is frequently portrayed as a spiritual role model. They serve as a reminder that public people's lives are seldom as straightforward or flawless as they might seem, and that even those who commit their lives to faith and service are not exempt from the difficulties, errors, and moral complexity that characterize our common humanity. Quinlan's readiness to face these experiences, grow from them, and carry on with his journey reveals a great deal about his personality and the depth of his spiritual dedication. Another recurring thread in Quinlan's life has been tragedy. His journey has been permanently impacted by the losses he experienced, whether they were personal, relational, or professional. However, it is precisely in these tragedies that we see his extraordinary fortitude. He has frequently used music as a haven and a means of expression, a method to deal with loss, convert sorrow into inspiration for others, and channel misery into creative expression. What makes David Quinlan's narrative so captivating is this duality, the blending of adversity and artistry. It shows that the human spirit can find brightness even in the darkest of circumstances, and that the act of creating may be a potent healing tool. When we think back on David Quinlan's life, we are prompted to think about more general issues, such as the strength of resilience, the imperfection of humanity, and the tenacity of faith. His path serves as a reminder that even those who appear to be closest to God and who are unwavering in their goals and aspirations are fundamentally human and experience the same anxieties, uncertainties, and heartaches as everyone else. The disputes, hardships, and tragedies he has encountered are not indicators of his failure. Rather, they are parts of a life well lived, full of growth, lessons learned, and the ability to serve as an example for others. In the end, David Quinlan's narrative inspires deep empathy, introspection, and appreciation in us. It inspires us to see the depth of the individual journey that underlies public success and to look past outward accomplishments. His complicated life serves as an example of perseverance, faith, and the unwavering search for meaning against seemingly insurmountable obstacles. As we finish this chapter, we are reminded that Quinlan's voice, his story, and his soul will live on, not just through his music, but also through the lessons ingrained in the compassion, bravery, and resiliency he has demonstrated during a life filled with both success and hardship. In the end, David Quinlan's story is one of hope. It shows us that the human spirit can persevere, inspire, and uplift even in the face of criticism, hardship, and tragedy. It is an encouragement to completely embrace life, to celebrate both our successes and our setbacks, and to understand that a life well lived is measured by the grace, bravery, and faith with which those setbacks are overcome rather than by the absence of difficulty.